Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Little. I am a Unitarian Universalist, member of the UU Fellowship at Stony Brook. I'm also the chair of the Long Island UU Fund Advisory Committee or Board. We are here today to help you understand some changes to our grant seeking process. There are two areas of change. One is that the Unitarian Universalist Association and its congregations have moved from our 7 principles, which many of you are familiar with, to a new statement of values. So we're going to explain that to you in more depth later. And we also have added applications for general operating support to our process, and that will also be explained. There are 4 of us, members of the board here today, and we will each introduce ourselves as we speak. But I want you also to know that we have a 5th board member whose name is Jean Honig. She's not able to be with us today. And I also want to encourage you always to reach out to the New York Community Trust staff who advise this board. That would be Saul Marie Alfonso Jones and Melissa Greenberger. Today, we're covering a welcome and introductions by Steve. Then we're talking about the general operating support and project-based grants. Jim is going to do that. Then I will speak about how we apply UU values to this grant. And finally, Dave will speak about tips to write a good grant application. So we are off, and I turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Deb. Welcome, everyone, to this overview of the Long Island Unitarian Universalist Fund, or the LIUU Fund. I'm Steve Burby of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Huntington. Let's dive straight into who we are, what we stand for, and how we operate. The Long Island Unitarian Universalist Fund is a philanthropic initiative rooted in the values that drive meaningful change. Established as an extension of the VEACH program at Shelter Rock, the LIUU Fund carries forward a legacy of social justice and community empowerment. The fund operates in partnership with the New York Community Trust Long Island, which we'll refer to as the Trust, leveraging shared resources and expertise to maximize its impact. At the heart of our work lies love, which connects and animates our 6 guiding values: justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, inclusion, and generosity. These are not just abstract ideals. They are the foundation of everything we do. I will briefly explain each of our new values. Justice. We strive to create fair systems that acknowledge and address structural inequities. Equity. Beyond equality, we focus on ensuring that every individual has access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive. Transformation. The world is constantly evolving, and so are we. We support initiatives that respond to urgent needs with vision and boldness, driving systemic and cultural change. Pluralism. We honor the richness of diverse voices and experiences, recognizing that inclusivity strengthens the collective. Inclusion. Our mission is to foster spaces where all are welcome, seen, and valued. Generosity. We commit to giving wholeheartedly of our time, resources, and energy to support the communities we serve. Each of these values is interconnected with love at the center, serving as both their foundation and their unifying force. This emphasis on love drives our mission to foster a world where justice and compassion prevail. The essence of the LIUU Fund is to fund and amplify efforts that align with these values. We provide grants to organizations and initiatives across Long Island that are working to dismantle barriers, uplift marginalized voices, and build a society where love and justice prevail. It is important to understand that this fund supports efforts to maintain, repair, and build social structures needed for such a society. We do not fund direct services or charitable initiatives. Instead, we support systemic change. Direct services are often focused on short-term results that address the here and now. They respond to the immediate needs of specific individuals or communities in distress. for example, food banks, domestic violence shelters, or suicide hotlines. They seek to alleviate inequalities and improve well-being, such as after-school programs or microfinance lenders, or provide training and education, like job skills or teen parenting classes. Systemic change looks at what is causing distress, inequality, and barriers to well being in the first place and tries to solve these issues at their core. In practice, systemic change includes policy and advocacy, strategic litigation, public education, movement building, and civic engagement. It involves transforming policies, practices, and structures to address root causes of problems and create lasting impact like advocacy, leadership development, organizing, and impact litigation. Both strategies are important. However, the focus of the LIUU Fund is to support efforts that lead to change. Today's session will also equip you with the tools and insights needed to navigate our grant application process. This process is designed to be as transparent and accessible as possible, reflecting our dedication to inclusion. We will detail application requirements, key deadlines, and evaluation criteria while addressing any questions you may have along the way. Thank you for joining us as we explore not only the logistics of the LIUU Fund's work, but also the values that inspire it. Let's continue the conversation with Jim Monnier, who will give us a detailed look at how you can partner with us in advancing this mission.
Thank you, Steve. I am Jim Monnier, and like Steve, I'm a member at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Huntington. So what can you ask for? I'd like to talk a little bit about general operating support versus project-based grants. We offer financial support in those two ways, general operating support as well as project-based support. Take them one at a time. General operating support is funding an organization's mission rather than a specific project or purpose. It's unrestricted financial support to provide flexibility to an organization to approach your work as you best see fit. The funding can support personnel, program, and/or administrative expenses. Project-based support is funding that's designated for a specific program or event that the nonprofit is running, new or existing. Now, if you've received grants from the Long Island UU Fund for at least 3 years and provided us with the required final reports and have a mission solely focused on Long Island, you're eligible to apply for general operating support. If that's not the case, then we'll only consider applications for specific project support. Statewide and national organizations can consider their Long Island work as the specific project. Our belief is that if we've been funding your projects for 3 years or more, we've developed a relationship and have built trust enough to know that you're using the funding in effective ways. In an effort to demonstrate trust-based philanthropy with the Long Island nonprofit community, we encourage you to apply for these unrestricted dollars to use as you see fit to accomplish your organization's mission. If you're new to the Long Island UU Fund, having received funding for less than 3 years, then you can apply for funding for a specific project. As previously described, the project cannot consist of solely direct service. It must demonstrably show how your work will impact long-term systemic change on Long Island. One more example to build on what Steve shared regarding direct services and systemic change approaches are, well, the fact that communities of color are more likely to be located near toxic runoff or in low air quality areas is a racial justice, environmental justice, public health, and municipal planning issue. A direct service approach would treat the resulting health problem or organize a cleanup. A systems change approach would seek to prevent toxic water and air pollution in the first place. Another example, an organization whose mission is to assist and support incarcerated women would be engaging in direct service if they provided personal hygiene items and baby supplies upon an individual's release. If they went to Albany advocated for the repeal of a law that allowed a pregnant prisoner to be shackled while delivering their child, that would be working for systemic change. Next up, we have Deborah, who is going to talk a bit more detail about our Unitarian Universalist values.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to talk more about our values because one part of our revised application asked you to explain in a very short paragraph how your work is going to further our UU values. So we're asking for a bit more thought and depth in your applications. So the LIUU Fund strives to give grants that bring our UU values into the world through systemic change. Now, UUism is a covenantal faith. We don't have a creed that everyone is required to follow, and we're a very diverse group theologically. We become a religious community through our bylaws and covenants with each other. We revisit our bylaws on a regular basis, which is why we're here today, in fact. Our principles were revised several times over the decades, and we recently, last year, switched to a statement of values. The essence of the principles are included in the value statements, but the values actually call us all to do the work in the world. So we now covenant, as Steve said, to work for values of justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. And to do that work within the spiritual discipline of love. Those are great words, but what do we mean? And how does it affect our granting? A few things to start with. When we talk about love, we're always talking about relationships. We strive to create the beloved community as described by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So this community seeks the fullest unfolding of each human being and cannot tolerate conditions of poverty, oppression, and discrimination. And these are goals that the LIUU Fund embraces. I told you that interdependence is one of our values, and we want you to understand that it is in fact an existential understanding of humanity and our relationship to the world and creation. It's an undeniable quality of our existence. So the example that Jim gave of doing work around environmental racism shows you all of the connections in the interdependent web. Many think of UUs as the faith that leads toward justice. This is true, but justice is not the heart of our faith. Justice is our outward manifestation of our belief in the fundamental interdependence of all life and the moral call to have these bonds of interconnectedness be woven in love. So when we apply this to the LIUU Fund, we can say that we seek grantees whose work moves us closer to the interdependent, justice-seeking, beloved community. Now, we have adopted 6 values, as you've been told, but only 3 can actually be actualized by our grantees. I want to explain a bit and focus on those. The first is interdependence. That calls us to protect and repair the environment and protect all beings from exploitation. We covenant to create and sustain and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality, and justice. We work to repair harm and damaged relationships between species and between humans and the world. So we welcome applications that focus on protecting, sustaining, and or repairing the environment and the interdependent inhabitants of planet Earth. We also focus on equity, which calls us to transform inequitable systems into equitable ones. We covenant to use our time and wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Of course, we also continue to fight for equality. We need to fight for equity in a world that puts up systemic barriers to equality. So you might think of equality as a necessary condition for equity. We recognize that it's not always equitable to offer the same thing to everyone. We all differ in important ways. If we provide equality but not equity, we ignore the different needs and social locations of different groups, as well as their access to resources and inclusion. So our fund welcomes organizations and projects that specifically build equity, often through increasing access, accommodation, and/or inclusion. Justice also calls us to dismantle racism and other forms of systemic oppression, recognizing their intersectionality. So we work to build diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all can thrive. Historically, UUs have joined struggles for abolition, gender equality, LGBTQIA plus rights and inclusion, healthcare for all, voting rights, civil rights, disability rights, immigrant rights, and much more. And we support organizations engaged in advocacy to dismantle systemic oppression against marginalized groups such as the ones I've named. Justice also calls us to protect the civil rights of Black, Indigenous, people of color, immigrants, women, people with disabilities, LGBTQIA plus individuals, and others who experience discrimination, exclusion, or unequal treatment. This is a more targeted goal, reflecting participation in specific movements and struggles to ensure civil rights for those who have historically experienced marginalization. We note that this work is crucial during historical moments when rights are being taken away through legislation, executive branch actions, and judicial decisions. And finally, justice calls us to support an inclusive democratic process. We believe in the necessity of fully inclusive democratic processes and structures, and our fund has supported many projects that build capacity for civic engagement by all. Now I'll turn to Dave, who will give you tips and advice on what we look for and how we review grant applications.
I'm Dave Holstein and a member of the UU congregation of the South Fork in Bridgehampton on the east end of Long Island. I have our last conversation. What does an effective application look like? I get to do the fun stuff. It's important to know that we want to make grants. We want to enable you to do the heavy lifting that enhances our community. Let your passion, commitment, and enthusiasm show through in our application. Number one, do your homework. We spent a lot of time today talking about what Unitarian Universalism is, but you have to recognize that those values that define us. Don't wing it and think every religion is the same. We are a very liberal faith. Don't be shy. Tell us how your project aligns with a particular UU value. Second is our Long Island focus. You need to be clear on how the project will impact Long Islanders. Number two, clarity and consistency. Often narratives are all over the map trying to convey the reach of their program and institution. Usually, that's not an effective way to go. It's impossible to approve programs that we don't understand. Similarly, applicants often assume we know the organization or the problems. Please take the time to briefly educate us on the issues and how you will address them. Avoid jargon and abbreviations. Then consider how your project is reflected in your website. Does it affirm your commitment to the project or the population you are going to be serving? Remember, the New York Community Trust is your ally. They represent you at our meetings. The more familiar they are with the organization, the better. Feel free to ask staff questions or for clarifications before writing up your proposal. Lastly, please be diligent in following the directions of the RFP. Applications need to be complete. Budget numbers have to add, and how you expect to finance the program needs to make sense. Number 3, scope and impact. We already discussed direct service and general operating grants. Those are key parameters. But the other areas that the advisors are thinking about as they review the applications include: does the project lead to transformational social change? Does it include advocacy or have an educational component? Will it lead to a more equitable Long Island? Does it target help the more marginalized among us? And finally, what is the expected impact? And if you could cover all that in a concise one-pager, that would be fantastic. Nah, only kidding. I'll end where I started. We want to be your partner. We want to help you realize your dreams and be an agent of change for our community. We want to make a real difference. We have 3 grant cycles per year, and we look forward to hearing from you. And thank you for all what you do for our community to make it a better place to live for all Long Islanders. Finally, I want to mention there will be another video that will talk about accessing the portal and how to make your application work for you and go through it. That will be following this one. Again, thank you very much for your attention, and we look forward to hearing from you in written form next time around.